This video was done, but I don't know what happened to the audio. I lost all the audio track throughout all the recording that we did for this video. So um, I'm going to narrate through it and see if I can't give you all the information that I can of all the different places and the history about this community. Apologize for the inconvenience, but sometimes we gotta kind of improvise. Hope you enjoy the video. My name is Tim, and I want to tell you a little history about a small community town in East Texas. This little community is kind of like all communities or towns. They all have a story to tell, the history of them, things that happened. This little town started back in the early 1800s, around the Texas Revolutionary War. Of course, most of the land in Texas was occupied by the Indians, the Cherokee, the Shawnee, the Delaware, and the Kickapoo Indians. And the Mexican government kind of liked them being there because they were kind of like a buffer between them and the white settlers that was moving into the Texas area. Of course, as the white settlers kind of moved west, coming into the Texas area, they come across a river that was Trinity River, and they set up camps alongside the river, kind of started homesteading there in that area. And it was because of the water, where they would be able to fish for food, water for their animals. One of the first settlers that moved into this area, that started this community, was Jane Irvine and her family, that moved from the southeast. And another family had moved in basically around the same time, was the Henry Jeffries family. They started a little community which they named Caney Creek. Jane, when she moved into the area, she started the first grist mill in this area. As time went, more settlers moved into the Caney Creek community, making that little town grow. Wasn't long after Jane and her family set up homestead there. Mitchum family and a lot of the followers had moved into the area. The Mitchum family, he was a reverend, and he started the first church there in the community, and slowly gathered a congregation that followed him throughout the years. As the white settlers moved in to the Texas area, of course they had their battles with the hot and dry weather of Texas. Made it hard for them to homestead the lands, be able to grow their crops. They had to battle with the Indians, but as time went on, they kind of drove all the Indians out of the area. They kind of pushed them more to the west and north up into the Oklahoma territory. In 1844, Reverend Mitchell and a lot of his congregation built the first church in the community, which was Methodist. And around 1852, they decided to change the name of Caney Creek to Mitchum Chapel. And in 1854, they applied for a post office in the community, and they tried to apply for the name of Mitchum or Pardone, but Those names were already taken, but they were suggested to use Malakoff. As I said, back during this time, all the homesteaders struggled trying to survive, grow their crops, and of course they had to deal with the Civil War, which made a lot of the homesteaders kind of move on, where they tried to find a different place to kind of homestead. Two pictures that were just shown, they were some of the pictures of the known town today of Malakoff back in the early 1900s. Some of the buildings are still standing, like the ones I'm showing here, which is the main street or the main part of the town of Malakoff. A lot of the population that was in Caney Creek started to move on because they struggled, but in 1880 a railway system went through, and that kind of started bringing that community back to life. Once the railway system was put through, then they started moving closer to the railway, which was about 1.5 to 2 miles south of Caney Creek, Mitcham Chapel community. That's where they put in the little town of Malakoff, close to the railroad track. As the settlers started moving closer to the rail system, they started building their homes, building their businesses in that community. Mitcham, he had built another church there close to the rail system, and in 1989 that church started becoming a school for that area. Of course, as other areas around started their little communities, Reverend Mitcham and some of his followers started building churches in these other communities. They started spreading out to the north, the east, the south, and the west. In the early 1900s, there was several businesses that were established, structures were built, and there are still some of these structures standing today, even though they have been renovated and kind of makeover to restore them, bring them back to not necessarily the original, but to where they're able to still be in use for other businesses. Some of the businesses that opened up in the community, they had at the time 9 general stores, 2 grocery stores, 3 drug stores, 1 furniture store, 2 lumber yards, stables. They had a brick company, a butcher shop, 6 doctors, 2 barbers, an undertaker, and of course they had a blacksmith in that area. Also in the early 1900s, as the town grew and the church congregation grew, some of the followers started having different opinions on the way the preachings were taught. So a lot of the followers, they kind of pulled away from the Methodist church, and they built a second church in the community, and they made it a Baptist church. One of the biggest commodities in the area, in the farming, most of them had like raising cattle, but as far as any type of crops, they struggled with. But the one that they were able to grow was cotton, so it became one of the biggest commodities in the area of Texas. And the way they transported the cotton was they loaded it onto wagons, and with ox they would pull them to the Trinity River, where they loaded them onto barges and shipped them downstream towards the coast. A lot of the pictures that you see are of the earlier days. The videos are of what some of these buildings still look like today. This video here is of a safe. I'm not quite sure where it came from. I was told that it was in one of the first businesses there. Two of the more wealthier settlers that moved into the area was H.L. Flagg and T.A. Bartlett. T.L. Bartlett, he was the one that started the brick company there, and he built the first house with his product. This is a photo of it as it looks today. He discovered the reddish dirt in the community along the Trinity River, and that's where they found that clay could be used to make the brick. And that company is still standing today, and it is known as Acme Brick Company. This product went on to build a lot of the businesses and homes in the area. This photo here is of the H.L. Flagg house. This home was finished in around 1921, and he paid $35,000 back in those days. He was also the one to start the first bank in the community. One other thing about the Bartlett home is it had a flat roof on it, and he did a lot of the entertaining of the people in the community, where he would throw parties at his home, and they would be up on the roof where they would eat and dance, kind of underneath the moon and the stars at night. The Flagg House here for a while was a museum, and now they've kind of changed it out where it's a bed and breakfast in the area where you can stay at this home. You see here one of the carriages that were used back in the early days that is still sitting there. Most of the furnishings in the house are still that of the museum or the earlier days in that community. Back around 1912, lignite coal had been discovered, and that was used by, I'm not sure whether it was the Texas Power and Light. They used a commodity to generate power for the houses, heat for these homes. But around, back up here a little bit, during this time they started doing the mining. They started out with around 600 people, and as the years went on, the employees grew. But then around 1945, they decided to go green and quit using the coal and went to gas. This photo here is of the First Methodist Church as it is today. The picture before it is kind of what the church, the original built church back in those days. And I'm not sure whether it burnt down or they just rebuilt a bigger one. As time went on, the population started declining around the 1940s, but it started to recover around the 1950s as they started putting in the Cedar Creek Lake Reservoir. Once the reservoir was in, more families started moving into the area around the lake. The population in 2018 was around 2,300 29, and it has grown even bigger since that time. I'm not sure exactly what the population is of 2020, but I know it has increased. All the information that I've gotten for this video, research has been done through Google, people that know the history of the area. Not saying that all the information that I've given is correct or accurate. If you come across anything in the video that is wrong, please comment in the section below, let me know so I can correct it. If you have any other information that you'd like to add to the history of Malakoff, please let me know. I hope you enjoy this video. We try to cover as much as we could. A lot of the old structures, pictures, the history on some of them, some of the businesses. Not sure exactly what businesses were in what buildings. You do have, like on that picture there, it has on the side of the building that was a kind of like a merchandise or a merchant store where they had clothing and food and different items in there. That building is one of the first buildings, I believe, that was constructed in the downtown Malakoff area. And I'm not sure whether the brick on it is some of the brick that was manufactured in the earlier days from the brick company that was there. Some of these buildings, like I say, they are old structures. Some of them are gone. I don't know whether they just fell apart or whether they were damaged, or whether it's possibly a fire. This here is the first school actually built in Malakoff. It was called the Rock School, I believe, and not sure when happened, but it caught fire, and I believe it burnt down, and they kind of reconstructed it back using some of the same stone. And then, of course, over the years, as the population grew, they added on to it. It's now elementary school, but it used to be a school for all grades. Be sure to watch for some of our other videos of other areas that we'll be doing in the upcoming future, trying to do history on other communities around the Northeast Texas area. And our final picture that is coming up is of the high school that was built, the first high school. Not sure whether it is in the same area as the high school that is here today, but the new high school is a lot different than what this one is.